Is predator management good game management? Should Alaska have a loser pays system for frivolous lawsuits? Is our new crime lab costing about 3 times more than it should? Should the state fund all schools equally, including Anchorage? Is it appropriate for the government to regulate tobacco use on private property? Are Cook Inlet belugas in danger?
Oh my God. No.
Should we mandate home recycling?
Home recycling.
Should winter snow tires or studs be required on all vehicles? Should Alaska follow Arizona's lead in enforcing federal laws regarding illegal immigration? Should the government regulate energy efficiency? Should the government regulate conservation standards? Is it ever appropriate for the government to regulate legal behavior through sin taxes?
Legal behavior?
Legal behavior. Are Medicare and Medicaid Ponzi schemes? Should all candidates be required to reveal their credit scores on their APOC reports? Would you be willing to reveal your credit score today? Is it over 680? And our last segment, thank God. Does the word bipartisan mean I have no underlying standards or principles? Is it ethical for current elected officials to run for another office? Should Alaska expand our basis for recall to include failure to represent the public wishes? Should Alaska expand our basis for recall to include failure to represent the public wishes? Does life begin at conception? Do you believe Darwin's theory of evolution? Is marriage between one man and one woman? Is the earth warming?
What, can you ask that question again?
Is marriage between one man and one woman? Got it?
No. Very.
Is the earth warming? If you said yes, is this warming caused by human activity? Is excessive debt immoral? Can most of today's problems be traced to a 1962 Supreme Court decision that removed prayer from schools? Does our nation need a transformational change? Thank you, candidates. We are now going to essay questions. Essay questions. In this segment, I am going to read a question or a statement. If you wish to answer, please raise your hand. Our president, Holly Kelty, right there, will select who is to answer the question. Now, you may answer more than one question. You may raise your hand more than one time. I will warn you that there are only 10 questions for all of you. So you don't have to answer any questions if you prefer not to. You have 60 seconds to respond. Any questions about this? Raise your hand if you would like to answer. How can the example set by our film industry legislation be used to attract other businesses?
Well, as I understand it, the legislature passed some tax incentives that have now resulted in the film industry doing more work in Alaska. Now, it seems to me you could apply that same logic to oil production. What we've done is we've raised the oil taxes to the extent that all of the oil profits generated in the state are now going to Texas or Oklahoma or Iraq or practically any place on earth because they can get a better rate of return on their investment. So I think that if you apply that same logic, we should consider revising the ACES tax so we can get more of that investment left here in Alaska so we can get more oil in that pipeline.
Thank you. Nope. Question number 2. Please discuss the constitutionality of and the effect today of the 17th Amendment.
If I didn't have the numbers correct, I think the 17th Amendment was when we changed from the state legislatures appointing U.S. senators to electing them at a state election. And the dynamic of that change, it removed away some of the power of the states and transferred it to the federal government.
Thank you. Question 3. Please discuss the Laffer curve and how it applies to our oil and gas industry today.
The Laffer curve actually was developed by a guy named Arthur Laffer. I think he's an economist. Imagine that, I know about it, at MIT. And what it says is when you look at tax policy, if you charge a zero income tax rate, then you're going to raise zero revenue. If you charge 100% tax rate, you're going to raise zero revenue. So somewhere in between there's this spot. Economists call it the equilibrium point, and that it actually maximizes revenue from your tax rate. It's somewhere in there. There's really no dispute in the economics literature about whether it exists. It's just where that point is. The key question, even if you know where that point is, the question is, do you want to set your taxes to maximize revenue or to maximize investment and economic incentives in the economy? That's the real question.
Thank you. And I will remind you, if you have written questions for any of the candidates, please get them to one of the ladies in red. Our next question. Should Alaska re-endorse the 10th Amendment? And if so, why and how?
You know, if by re-endorsing it, you mean to enforce it, I agree absolutely. The federal government is far overreaching and shutting down our state's ability to develop our own natural resources. So I support the efforts that Arizona is making. You know, the Idaho legislature actually passed a law that prohibited the federal government from requiring their residents to buy national health insurance, to be part of Obamacare. It was signed by their governor. Now that's a good, assertive step that I think our state should take. Yes, we've joined that lawsuit against Obamacare, but I think we need to do even more. Because essentially the federal government is out of control. We are a republic. Now if you look up the word republic, that means that the states hold the main authority, not a nationalized, centralized government. And that's what our present administration is doing. And it actually has been happening over several years. It didn't just happen.
Thank you. Next question. Please discuss the Fifth Amendment and the constitutionality of the Kelo versus New London decision.
Could you ask it again?
Please discuss Fifth Amendment and the constitutionality of the Kelo versus New London decision.
This is one of eminent domain, right?
Yeah.
And eminent domain, in Connecticut, what they did is they basically commercialized eminent domain for commercial purpose, and it was thrown out. We have many instances here in the state of eminent domain. I think a lot of you might have been well aware of the issues of the coastal trail extension, which caused some local issues, and I think it's very clear that eminent domain should only be for the safety, public safety, if at all.
Thank you. Our next question. Did G.W. Bush's Homeland Security and the TSA unconstitutionally take away our rights and our freedoms? And if so, what can be done to restore them?
No. Did George Bush, in creating Homeland Security, did that impinge on our constitutional rights? Well, it's federal government's job to take care of the security of its citizens and to establish defense and all those issues. And when we have a foreign power that attacks our country, not only does he have the right, but he has the duty to install a system by which it will protect our citizens. Now, the question then comes to, did he overstep that in impinging on private rights? And I don't see that. I thought that they tapped around that as much as they can. I think in some ways they didn't do enough because they were worried about profiling and all this stuff that dealt with private rights. And if they would have taken serious the fact of who it is that hates us, that we would have even been protected more. And so I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it was his responsibility.
Thank you. Next question. Please discuss the effects of the federal takeover on our education system and what we must do to improve our schools.
Well, I've had the opportunity to work with many students in several school districts in Alaska. The federal government actually does not, or the Department of Education actually doesn't really need to exist. The states are perfectly capable of providing education as a citizen. As a high school teacher, I think that what we can do is to engage students, and the way we do that is something that actually Charisse mentioned in her opening comments. We need to provide students with skills that are marketable when they get out of school, and that means bringing the community, the businesses into the classroom. That means teachers sitting down in teams with professionals in the community to say, what do you need to do to be an architect? How can we show students what this job is like so that we can light a fire under them? A lot of the programs that we see funded have to do with students that are dropping or we're losing because they're not engaged. I think that we can do a better job without spending more money by serving every student in this capacity, and I've seen that. I taught in a situation where 5 teachers teamed and we integrated the content material, and I think that's a great way of engaging more students.
Thank you. We have questions from the audience, and they are going to follow the same format. Anyone can answer. Please raise your hand. The $28 million energy override for Alaska comes with a $60 million price tag for Alaska. Will you support asking for more government funds, or will you reject the Fed's encroachment into our I can't say the word, sovereignty? $28 million energy override. It's a $60 million price tag. Anybody want to hit this?
Well, I'm gonna answer the question in a more fundamental principle way. And that is, we have to stop taking federal money that has strings attached to it. It's another way that the federal government extends its tentacles into our state, and we become obligated to them. Not just in energy, but in education, in environmental issues, our roads, they control even where